a couple more seconds and we'll go ahead and kick off. We're excited about today. All right, welcome to today's panel on creating lasting change to your development workflow. Whether you're joining us on Zoom or any live social channel or streaming platform, we're excited to have you here with these three experts to talk really about the software development workflow. Couple of housekeeping items to kick us off before we jump into the content. The sound for today's presentation should come from your computer. If you have that option, definitely use that, not the dial-in. If you're running any problems, hit us up on Q&A. We'll answer that here on the Zoom platform. Post anything in social, we'll be monitoring that in the background and certainly would love to help you out. Typically, if you refresh your browser, rejoin the presentation, usually resolves most issues and should be in good shape. We'll be answering questions. That's a big part of what makes this fun. That's why these three have joined us today. We've built some questions obviously to get us kicked off, but the fun part of these conversations is always really interacting with the questions you have right now here. And so we'll be monitoring the Q&A. So there's a button if you're in the Zoom platform, a button for Q&A right here at the bottom. Go ahead and ask a question. We'll see it, and we'll if it's pertinent to that line of thinking, I'll dive right into that question immediately, or we'll hold some questions to the end. We also have a couple of our team members monitoring the streaming and social platforms if any questions get asked there. So to submit your question, go ahead, please click on that question mark button at the bottom. And last thing is, yes, we are recording. We'll be sharing the recording out with everyone in the next few days. So with that, love to introduce to you our panelists for today. First off is Pete. Pete, wave. Pete is a senior front-end engineer. He's an award-winning engineer with really cool history of working in advertising and video games, which is kind of a fun angle that we usually don't get, as well as security and investigation. So of all the cool things, I think we could have a lot of fun conversations with Pete in terms of the things he's done. Adam comes from us. He spent over a decade leading engineering teams. He's now senior manager of engineering at AWS. If you've ever heard of that, where he focuses on building engineering excellence, a collaborative culture, and solid architectural foundations. Last, we have actually Zoran, who's coming to us from Belgrade, all across the ocean today. So any of you who are joining us from Europe, glad to have representation from Zoran today as well. He is the founder and CTO of Coding Helmet, a consultancy offering training and coaching services to software houses and companies that have in-house software development. So really good, rounded experience for today. And today, as we talked about this, one of the big things that really we're talking a lot about lately is how we structure really efficient, effective software development workflows. And so we'd love to kind of dive into those subjects today and get right into these experts. And please, once again, ask those questions. But the first thing I kind of want to start off with is actually talking about the idea of how we create lightweight processes that don't get in the way of engineering, actually facilitate, flow efficiency. And so Zoran, I'd love to kind of start off actually with you to talk about this topic. Tell me, first off, let's define what you mean by lightweight process and what you consider when looking at, what processes you're going to use with your teams.
Yeah. Hi, Austin, and hello, everyone. Thank you for joining us, for coming. So let's start. What do I look for in when processes are considered, right? So as the title of this discussion today is, I love lightweight processes. I actually like processes that I don't see the most, because when you develop code, when you develop software, what do you want? You don't want to develop software. You want to release that software. You want to see people using it. And what are those processes there? They have no value themselves. If they can help stay out of the way from releasing good software that satisfies customers' needs, then they are all right. If you feel them, if you suffer, if you have to carry them on your back every day, then they are not good, obviously. There will be a lot of talking in this 1 hour about that, so let's not put all the words in the first question, but that is about it. If it is really, really lightweight, so that it helps and you don't notice the process itself while you develop software, I'm fine with that.
Yeah, no, that's a great intro to this conversation. One thing I really liked about what you said is it falls into the background. Like, it should not be front and center. What is front and center is the value delivering for customers. What would you say as advice for everyone here who's joining? What would be some cues, some things to look out for to help you understand that your process might be getting in the way of your developers? What are some red flags, I would say?
Well, there are many, many red flags, but most basically, I like to be with developers who work on code, and I like to sense what they sense. If I feel that there is bad atmosphere, that they feel bad, then there is something wrong with the way the software is developed. There are many things that can go wrong, from not understanding the domain, not being talking right with the customer, not understanding, or having, I don't know, pathological case, having management standing in the way of developing software. Many other things can happen, but you see that people don't feel well, and there are many results from that. For example, people leaving the project, new people coming in. When I jump into a project, I had one project where I came pretty late. There were about 15 developers, and 30 developers went through the team before I came to lead it. There was only one guy from day one. So that is a huge red flag. Nobody knew how the project was developed and how we got here. So if you are in development, I reckon that this panel is mostly directed towards developers and technical people, not to management audience. So if anyone is on the technical side, they should feel what developers feel, and they will know right away if things are going well or not.
Yeah, no, it's a good point. And actually, yeah, we have actually both like leadership and actual development kind of represented today in the audience, which is great. Kind of give us that both sides of the angle. And this really kind of we kicked off with, okay, what are some of the, what's the why behind lightweight process? But Adam, I'd love to kind of actually transition a little bit to you, and talk more about, so we kind of know, here's some things that tell us that our process isn't working for us. But let's for a moment, let's pretend that we have a blank slate, which never happens. But if you were to go, Bill, like, what are the elements that are crucial to having a strong development workflow? And I'll preface this with, this is a question I just came up with on the spot. So we're totally putting Adam on the spot here on this one.
No problem. So I want to just call out Zoran's two amazing quips. Like, if I was to go to take this and create a meme and put his beautiful face on it, it would be like, if you feel the process, that's a red flag and it's not lightweight. Like that was awesome. If you feel the process, by definition, it's not lightweight, right? You're feeling the pressure there. I loved it. And then the second is management standing in the way. I mean, look, if that's the right indicator, I don't think I have a job anymore. So I'm not really, right? We don't try to stand in the way in management, but it's a serious thing, right? Is that it's always that dichotomy of like managing between being there and being a management and leading and not being in the way. And it's a razor's edge. So let me answer your question. Sorry, I just wanted to pull this out because I loved our input in there. That was spectacular. So ultimately, when I take a thought process around what is a process, what is the development lifecycle, what is the process that goes through it, I kind of break it down into 4 categories or structures. right? You have design work or problem identification, right? So the very first thing, probably all heard this 1,000 times, but it's a statement that I love, right? Give you an hour to solve a problem, I'll take 55 minutes understanding the problem and 5 minutes solving it. I'm a huge believer in that. Like, you cannot possibly solve a problem appropriately that you do not understand. So the very first piece, and you'll hear me talk about this all the time, but the very first piece of understanding and getting into that is the architecture, the design, figuring out what you're doing, getting a really good sense of the issue that you're solving. So first step, design, problem understanding. The next is you get into planning, right? Inside of the process of planning, that's when you start to put together the solving, what you're doing, who's going to be doing the work, what does it look like? Then you get to the bulk, which is the work, right? Getting the actual work done, and verifying that you're going along ways and trying to work through that process. And then finally, to Zorn's point, nobody cares how good your code is if it's never deployed. Nobody cares what you've created if it's not got into production and into the hands of the individuals that you're trying to service with it, within those services or solutions or products. So those four pieces between design, plan, work, and deploy really make up the life cycle. And each of those has to be attacked and understood as to how you can make processes that are lightweight, how you can make pieces inside of each of those elements be more efficient, be quicker, be frictionless, right? Again, Zorn, I think that you're pointing that out, but like, if you're feeling it, you're not, that's a red flag. You shouldn't be able to do that. That's not categorical, obviously, but yeah. So those are the pieces, I think, to answer your question. That's the steps that I try to walk through. Those are the high level abstracts that if I can feel that we're doing a good job in each of those, if I can get feedback from the engineers that those are the pieces that we're just not worried about, then we get to spend all the time on the differentiated work in between those simple processes.
Yeah, no, that's super interesting. I like the way, that's a really good framing. So design, plan, work, and deploy. And if we can actually take each of those four categories of work and actually think of them as independent things. I mean, they're part of an entire process, but let's go tackle one of those at a time. Let's not go and take on the world and figure out where we need to go and find opportunities. You used a really good comment. I'd love to kind of dive into this more, because based on our conversations in the past, you talked about if things are feeling good. But you also, and I know this from talking to you before, is that you have a really big passion around using data. So first off, big question is, let's talk about feeling versus, I'll call it objectivity with data. Like how does that work together? When is one better? When is the other better? Give us some guidance on that.
Sure. So, taking a feeling or kind of the emotional impact, being an empathetic leader, I think, is super, super important, right? Getting that understanding of what is the overall feel of the system is great. It's something that you learn. It's something that each individual manager or leader or engineer independently evolves over time, right? And you start to listen to your gut, so to speak. That's great, and it's super, super helpful. But really, a goal or a objective not measured is unsuccessful. That's not any words. None of those are words. But just go with them. You know what I mean? So we're ultimately trying to identify, like, how do we succeed, right? One of the biggest challenges inside of engineering is the word done. When are we done, right?
Yeah.
Because it's like, you'll get an engineer who's like, I'm code complete, I'm totally done. And product's like, no, you're not. And manager's like, what are you talking about? We're not anywhere. We haven't tested this thing. And then you get testers that are like, hey, we're done, right? And it goes through that process. Anyway, so the data points on this are very, very tricky, because how do you take an entire industry of this super ephemeral system of languages, deployments, products, systems, and services that are all trying to work together and say, hey, let me give you a speed limit. Let me give you something that's universally understood as a metric that you can follow. That's super, super hard. Well, fortunately, in my personal opinion, there's some really, really smart people that have put together. I'm going to do a plug here. I have no stock in this whatsoever, but there's a really good book called Accelerate, and it talks about lean software development, DevOps. And inside of the book, there's these 4 metrics that I have been really found to be trackable across almost any of the industries that I've worked in, which has been education, cybersecurity, fraud prevention. Right? I've been in a lot of different industries, private consulting, MLMs for all of those of you in Utah who love to work on that kind of stuff. Any of those pieces have these things, and if you're not familiar, the 4 categories of metrics are lead time, deployment frequency, mean time to recovery, and change failure percentage. I really just want to make a quick plug for the lead time, right? Again, Zoran, I going back to a lot to your, I really liked a lot of your comments, so I'm going to keep plugging on that. But lead time is from the time of conception, or first commit of code, until it gets into production. Like, man, if you are going to pick something, like that is it. That is the key. How long does it take you to solve, figure out, and understand a problem, and then get it into the hands of the people that you're solving for? That's my golden key, to be honest. Lead time is where I'm finding I can track that data. I can use that as a feeling. If are things going well? Are we getting code into the hands of those who need it? Are we actually done? Right. That's what I try to focus on.
I love that. Yeah, it's a great intro to this, Adam. Great way to kind of think about it's the context. There's no universal benchmark, but there's context, and then there's these kind of well-documented good practices that help us understand where to use data. And I love that. And I'm right there with you. We also not advocate for, no money on the table for Accelerate. Great book. We spend a lot of time talking about lead time here at Flow. Like I love that push. Pete, I actually want to kind of go to you. I'm going to start with actually a fun question that's probably somewhat unfair. But you've worked in some pretty cool industries, right? You're currently at Riot Games. You've worked in advertising, security, investigations, which is pretty sweet. So tell us a little more, like just for fun, tell us like what's been the most fun industry to work in from a software development perspective?
I would say advertising, for sure. It is incredibly fast-paced. It is always new projects, always new creative coming in. It's get us something, ship it, move on to the next thing, so you aren't just working on this sort of giant product over and over where you never really have an end. And then I just like to be able to send my friends and family's websites I work on. I mean, and brag a little bit. And also, you don't get an award for working on an internal system to track cheating incidents, which I worked on in the security firm. But not to say that there aren't fun things about the other industries. Obviously, getting to play League of Legends in the afternoon and get paid during that time is not bad. But yeah, definitely advertising is terrible pay, amazing projects. Depending on how committed you are, you can work 40 hours a week, or you can work, I want to say we were on a project for Oregon football, and the developer next to me, I think 32 hours in the chair.
It's 32 hours straight in the chair.
Yes, he didn't go home. And so it can be like that. But that site ended up winning a ton of awards. It won Best in Show at the Utah Addies, and there's a spray painted gold fire hydrant was the trophy. So nice. That's always fun.
No, and I'll bring it back. It's kind of I love kind of starting there, because I think one of the key things you talked about is the reason you liked advertising was how fast paced it was. And to me, like bringing it back to workflow, like compare and contrast, like how that must have been different because of how quick you moved. What if you say, what are some lessons I learned about how to build workflow from my personal perspective, how I approach my work based on the speed of the industry? What were some of those key learnings for you?
So I learned that especially at the small agency I worked at that was just starting up for a few years before I came on, that there were not processes almost at all. You can imagine when your deadlines are set externally by your clients, that anything that stands in the way of speed is going to be sacrificed regardless of whether or not it would have helped in the long run. And so, wait, hold on. For some reason, I forgot the question. Can you say it again?
What are some key things you learned about, like working in such a
yeah.
fast-paced environment?
All right. I learned that the code that you write is going to be held together with bubble gum and scotch tape, most likely by the end of every project. Like I said, as long as it shows up on the browser, the client doesn't really care so much. So unfortunately, while I'm not saying the code is bad, I'm just saying that it's not, hasn't been run through as many checks and balances, and we didn't have, oh, this is embarrassing, but we all pushed to master for years. Every developer, when you were done with a feature, you just push to master. And I cannot tell you how many merge conflicts we had to deal with. And I'm like, what is this Git, man? What are these merge conflicts? This tool sucks. But anyway, so when I say no processes, I mean it. But, we ended up, getting code reviews going there a little bit and architecting our software before diving in. But yeah, so that was the agency experience.
Yeah. So yeah, definitely a lot of, very much, like very different, I guess, from what I'm used to. Adam, I'm gonna go back to you, and then I'll have Zoran answer the same question as well. But I love, this is a great conversation. So you've let's say as a new manager or new director of engineering, you've inherited a situation that Pete kind of described. It's a little bit Wild West. We're prioritizing short term at the expense of long term. And I loved how you kind of talked about data. Like, tell me, how do you approach that? Like, what are some advice for the managers, leaders here? Like, how to approach that situation from a systematic way and help start building structure that's going to make, bring more healthy processes to the forefront.
Okay, here's my first thing. As a director, as a new manager, inheriting a system like that, or getting something that has been that trade-off for speed over quality, isn't always the wrong choice. So as engineers, we really always want to be right, get everything perfect and wonderful and amazing code. It is one of the most difficult keys to phenosis inside of engineering, to take a step back and say, like, are we making the right decision for the business, for the clients, and for the delivery, right? So at AWS, you'll always hear people comment and talk about that the client comes first and that we're client-centric and et cetera, et cetera. I've only been here for a couple of months, and I'm not speaking by any means on behalf of AWS or Amazon, but I can say, like, that is 100% true. Every single conversation is, how does this impact the client? How does this impact the customers? And there's billions of them. So it may not be you as a customer who are happy with the delivery, but it's always considered. So as a new engineer, as a new director, as you're inheriting something like that, because you will, almost unequivocally, you will, no matter how incredible you think of a company or a system you're going to, somebody has written really crappy code and has pushed it live, right? Someone has deployed straight to master, guaranteed. Doesn't matter where you are. So when you're starting to get into those processes, understanding that business side is essential. It's really essential to know what those trade-offs are. Architecture at every level, not just in software, is about trade-offs. And so as I'm engaging in something like that, and taking a look at what are the processes that I can start to put together, the first thing I want to understand is why did we make the decisions that we made? And are those variables still in play? Because the worst thing that you can do is jump in with a mindset that you want to fix this bad deploy practices and put processes in place and kill a business, because you can. You have that power, you have that control as an engineering manager. You may not feel that you do, but you can. And so you've got to identify why those decisions were made, and take that business side. Okay, taking off the business hat that nobody really likes because suits are lame. I understand. I did come up through engineering, and I have that inbred hate for chasing the money and writing bad code. So once you get past that and you do want to identify what you can do, the very first thing, again, this may be a shock to you, the very first thing to do, and Pete even mentioned this, is start to architect first, right? It's okay to start where you are. The whole planetary, the best time was 10 years ago, the next best time is today. It's true for code as well. Don't go back and try to fix everything that's ever been written. Start with what is the problem you're solving today, and how do you architect and design that for the future, and you're going to catch up. You will make it there. So those are the two pieces: understand the business side and drive the architectural design, understand the problems that you're solving. That's the best place to start. You're not boiling the ocean. You're not trying to work through all this stuff. Fix the problems that you have in front of you, and move from there.
Cool, I like that. Zoran, same question to you.
Okay, so Adam gave a great introduction, because that shows that you were in the trenches and you knew what it means. That situation you explained, the project, code, architecture, everything is falling apart and the product is rolling out and being used. I believe that is a typical situation in programming, despite all the books and all the knowledge we gathered in past, say, at least 2 decades to not do it that way. I believe that things are still going that way. And Adam said one very important element which makes that situation work that way: a lack of understanding. When you assemble a team and give them tasks, they have no clue what they are doing. They don't understand the business, and they start understanding it in the next 3 months, 6 months or so. And then they start delivering, okay, and gather feedback. If you paid due attention to testing, to projections, everything that makes I don't know, nice way of developing software, you would be 3 months back already. You wouldn't have the product. What I also mentioned the first time, that was that team with the overturn of employees. Too many engineers were leaving. If you can assemble a team and keep people in that team, release something, get the feedback. It doesn't matter if your architecture is crap, if everything is falling apart, because those people will know the business then, and then we get to the next step of making that better. I always quote the curse of programming. The worst thing that can happen to you as a programmer is a success. When your project succeeds, you're doomed. You will live perfectly, blissfully, while you only have this many users of your software. And when it explodes, no matter what you did, your software will not survive that. So you will have to do many, many things all over again in no time. You will have deadline by yesterday, because in today's world, software doesn't grow like this. I mean, number of users, but it grows exponentially. In 1 month, you have 3 zeros more to number of users. Any plan you made will not work. So at this point, I don't mind having bad architecture, not tested code, no CI/CD, nothing, but I want to see determination in people, and I want to see people who survived that because they know the business. That is the most valuable. Again, people are the most valuable thing in development.
So I'd love to actually kind of go forward and talk more about this idea of we're kind of still in this kind of making process more visible and data driven. And you kind of touched on that really quickly, Adam, you kind of introed that. I think I'd love to kind of dive in more. I'm actually going to kind of pinpoint this on a more human level. Often we think of data, we think of the business, we think of the suits, right? As you called it out, Adam. And I think how can we think of data from like a personal perspective? How can that make me better as an individual, as a leader? Is that a pipe dream, or is there something there that actually I can use data to help me?
Who is?
So,
sorry, Adam first, and then I'll go back to. Then I'll go Pete and Zoran.
So, it's very interesting to drive to the question. I would say that in the last 3-4 years, every product that I've been a part of delivering, it's been a very interesting experience to hear and to see the engineers have a lot of passion and interest around delivering value to the end user, delivering value to the customer, wherever that customer may be. And so something that we do a fairly terrible job in this industry is treating engineers like humans and not like robots or like engineers.
Right. Yeah.
Right. And so we have a hard time empathizing because I've always had the term darkroom coder that I've used historically, and ultimately I say that, and that loads up for me and for the majority of my peers and friends, like, darkroom coder is this guy sitting in the room, Mountain Dew and Red Bull cans everywhere, no lights on, 36 hours, I think, 32 hours, 36 hours in a chair, right? This is what we think about when we think of engineers. Well, guys, that is totally dehumanizing. That's not normal. Right? We don't do that as normal people. And so we put ourselves in these situations where we kind of have hero coders. We have these different situations where we're really, really excited about the code that we're writing. And so many times as managers, as leaders, it's really hard for us to not celebrate those wins and then separate them to like, yeah, but that was a person. That was his time, his effort, his energy. That was her jumping in and taking so much of her passion and putting it in there. And we're like, yeah, but what's the delivery? How's the money? Where's it going? Right. And we don't share with the engineers historically very well in leadership. What did you do? Why did you do this? Right. One of the biggest things is we're dealing with that I've dealt with a ton is like, have product come in, sit down in your sprint reviews or your sprint demos, have product come and say, this is what you just did for these customers. This is why we asked you to build it. And this was the outcome. I challenge a lot of places to tell me that they do that. I don't think that it happens a lot. It needs to happen significantly more. Managers need to engage with their engineers, tell them what they did. And don't just say, hey, you delivered this thing. Good job for hitting the deadline. It made us a bunch of money. I'll give you an example. Inside of AWS organizations where I've taken over, we work to try to eliminate undifferentiated work. We're trying to help with onboarding. We're trying to help to drive a passion inside of Amazon, where as you as an organization engage, one of the things that I tell my engineers and that I try to prove with data is that somewhere around the neighborhood of, and this is scale, mind you, right? We're dealing with Amazon, somewhere around the neighborhood of 15 million DevOps, cloud engineers, SysOps engineers out there are impacted by everything that we release, right? Because that's the tool sets that we release. So when I sit down and I talk to my team and I say, if you as an individual, as a team, build this product, it will save 1 hour for one dev across our entire organization every week. Okay, that's great. 1 hour, one dev every week. Except that's not the scale. The scale is 15 million hours a week from us deploying something, from us pushing something out. 15 million hours that is undifferentiated work removed from the table, where those engineers get to innovate, get to actually put back into the industry what we really love to do. Nobody likes to do undifferentiated work. No one likes to build, security patches. I won't say no one. Very few people really, really enjoy that. And we have an opportunity to express to our engineers, to these people, to these humans, right, what their work does, the impact that it has, and why they're getting it done. That is a absolutely overlooked piece that is really, really important. We are not robots. We are passionate coders who love our craft, and we got to be reminded of that. Absolutely.
Hey, Adam, I think you had a great point on that one. And Pete, I love how you shared. You kind of just expressed it naturally, just like when I was close to the action, I enjoyed that, even though there was some other things I didn't like about it. Like that was a big part of me. Like, tell me, like, how maybe in industries where that wasn't the case, like, is there ways in which you felt closer to the action because of the workflow than others, and how that may have improved your approach?
Yeah, so it is nice on the one hand in the advertising. It is definitely like the joy comes at release, and that's it. When the site is when you hit the big giant deploy button. But it is definitely fun to see, especially in like a rapid release team, where at the end of every sprint we go to production, which isn't super rapid. I know there are people who push to production every day at their companies or multiple times a day, but it is fun to see customers talking to the people who talk to me and saying, hey, they like this feature, but they want this and this, and that would be more helpful. And you get to push that out and see it in real time, basically. Especially on internal tools, you're helping your colleagues succeed through your sort of rapid development that way. So, that is also rewarding to do, as well as just the work hard and pump out one website thing. But yeah, it's a different type of fulfillment, but it's there, yeah, for sure. And also, I did want to say that they didn't require us to work 31 hours in a row. But my agency was actually pretty good about deadlines, but I just took a lot of pride in the code, in the craft, and in the product. So I was typically working long hours just purely out of love of the craft. So it's fun though.
Cool. Well, I think this is a good time to kind of transition a little bit. We've talked about a number of really cool things. We've talked about how to identify when a process is weighing you down. And I think there was that, you got to remind me of the meme quote we kind of came up with, Adam. We talked about the approach of design, plan, work, deploy, really taking and looking at all four of those areas, where are those opportunities to find. I love talking about how data incorporates into that. And I love also the context of like how I know as how I feel things are right, and where should I focus, and how can the data inform that. I think, kind of diving forward, I think one of the big things we actually wanted to spend some time on today was talking a little bit more about, and this is going to hit better on that term you brought up, is undifferentiated work, right? Work where you're reinventing the wheel for no real gain. And I think that there's a lot of commonality between that and DevOps and CI/CD and like those types of things. Tell me more, and Zoran, I hope I actually go to you in this one, and then Adam, but like, how, if you're not practicing CI/CD, how do you begin?
Oh, yes, that's interesting. So we continue the previous question. So we met chaos, right? Okay. Sorry for hard language last time. I'll try to behave, but I really get excited when it comes to speaking about hot projects that have become hot, and things look both good and bad, and there are many prospects ahead of us. So establishing processes, establishing CI/CD and testing and things like that is an obvious step to make when you get into that situation. Well, when I see a team in that state, I like to poke them a bit by saying, okay, here's my laptop. Can you get your system running on it, like, I don't know, in 15 minutes? Mostly no, but and they are perfectly aware of that the answer is no. But what they are not aware of is that they can make small steps, one step at a time, and eventually, maybe in a month or so, get in situation when that answer becomes yes. And it becomes very obvious to everyone on the team. And there is one trick that I have applied a couple of times, and it works magically. The first thing to do in a large project is to separate configurations for development. I mean, real development, not even QA, but for developers, for engineers, and say production, anything that is not development. If they can run the system on their computer independently from each other, if they can redeploy code to their machine and start over the day again without much, I don't know, panic or I don't know, connecting to dozens of services outside that machine, they will start feeling differently, and they will start seeing what it means to start the system from fresh, from scratch. And they will be able, the engineers will be able to develop that CI/CD machinery and make it work eventually.
So
And I also, before we go further, before we go further, I wanted to add one anecdote to that question of humanizing. Or maybe
please.
2 anecdotes that I have a dozen of them. One day I met my best man in the street, and I tried to say hello, and he pulled his smartphone and said, "Look what we released today," before saying hi. Because programmers and all kinds of engineers in IT are very proud of what they deliver. And the second anecdote will probably take some smiles off some faces. There is that story, which I don't know if it is true, but I can believe it. Some secret service was complaining that they cannot get good programmers on board at all, because it turned out that being a programmer and being in a secret service are the opposing kinds of characters, because programmers go off work and start speaking to people on the street what they delivered. So that didn't work out. That's what I wanted to say. IT engineers are so proud of what they do. They feel bad if you don't deliver their code in 6 months.
Okay, yeah, and that's a great. Pete, Adam, and Zoran, you've all talked about this thing. I'll take it back to Zoom, and then we'll talk more about some of the technical side again. But this is great. I think as I walk away from this discussion, I feel really strongly that the biggest thing I can do as a leader of engineers is understand that they're proud of their work, and the biggest thing I can do to unlock them is to connect them to the differences that they're making outside of their machine, right? I think that's what I'm walking away with. And I think that's kind of what you were expressing, Zoran, and the same thing for you. And actually, all three of you really said the same thing. So I like that a lot. I appreciate that kind of that addendum. I think that's really, really, really impactful. I like that. And I had this other thing I loved about what you said, Zoran, is this almost this litmus test. Can you get this thing up and running on 15 minutes on your laptop? Adam, how do you feel about that? Do you think that's like a fair kind of a test to say how mature are we in this process?
Yeah. So I actually loved it too. I thought that was the abstract, I think is great, right? You actually handing them your laptop and saying go sounds like a world of fun, to be honest. Mainly just to watch people panic. But outside of that, I think that something to be really aware of is, we have spent a lot of time in this industry growing at unattainable exponential speeds, right? We look at the software development industry for the last 30 years, right? That's not even my lifetime as an old man. I think most of us here are. But it didn't exist, right? Years and years and years ago, and certainly not in the spaces that it is. And we've evolved through, architecture design to microservices to DevOps to all these key terms and all these things we throw out. And I don't want to minimize CI/CD by any means, but I do want to call out maybe just as a you're not alone type of comment here. Nobody, I won't say nobody, very, very rare is it that a system is a CI/CD in its pure state, right? We don't build those systems. We're not building systems that fly off the shelf there. And if you do, you're likely a very lean, agile, small to mid-sized organization with a very simplistic or straightforward architecture design.
Right.
Most of us have aspects that, to your point, can I get it up and running? Like, absolutely. You should have aspects of a pipeline that are automated, that remove undifferentiated work, that allow for you to get code to the end user as fast as possible. It brings us back to lead time, right? In my initial conversation, and one of those metrics that I try to track. The reality is that you can, in fact, build a set and start somewhere, right? You don't have to feel like you have not succeeded if you don't have a fully functional, completely automated, end-to-end code to deploy without a thought process pipeline. It's okay. Like, it's okay to not be there, but picking up those tests, picking up those small pieces of like, hey, can I deploy through 2 environments without having to touch anything before we have to take a hands-on test? Great, get it done. Can you go from a commit inside of your repo and get that pushed all the way so that everybody has it? Great, right? Start somewhere. It's just fine. So those small litmus tests, whether it is pick up your machine and get it running in 15 minutes, which I do love, or if it's, hey, I hit deploy and someone else saw it that I didn't have to go tell, you're succeeding. You're doing good, right? And so this pipeline, this thing, it is the new hotness. It's absolutely amazing. It does get that into the hands, but it is a complex beast that exponentially grows in complexity as you scale up. So, give yourselves a little bit of help there. You're doing great. No doubt you're doing great.
Oh, I think that's such a great kind of companion comment to what you were talking about, Zoran, because there is this spectrum of where we are currently at. And if we're starting from scratch, we're going to probably be able to implement CI/CD with pretty minimal effort. And it's going to look and feel just like it was supposed to, right? But I've seen also the other side where we go tackle the new hotness, as you said, and 6 months later, go, you know what? That probably wasn't the best decision. And we've all probably been there, right? And like I think there's definitely the shiny object syndrome a little bit. But I think that's kind of what bridges the gap to me from like, are we talking about this from like, we're all engineers, we're talking technical things, or are we talking how to lead teams? And I love what you ended there with, Adam, is that let's make some small steps. And I think, Zoran, you said the same exact thing. You said, let's just make kind of small bits of progress, because we all are navigating this most of us, fairly complex architecture, fairly complex team structure. We have different skill sets, different tenured, people on our team. And how do we actually take this complexity? We're being fed all this information about how cool CI/CD is, and that, everything we just talk about is mean time to recovery or deployment frequency. But in the meantime, I've got to deal with like keeping the lights on. And I think that takes me back to those 4 areas, is like, let's not boil the ocean. Let's hunt down those 4 things. Let's go find some things to continuously improve across those, because it's probably not going to benefit us in the long term to always compare ourselves against the perfect situation, right? And I think we all get that. That's not rocket science. I think we do have one question that just come up on a so question, that's a good one. So good one to the panel from Jeremiah. Where can I learn more about CI/CD? If I want to get started, where do I go? What's a good resource? Never mind, the person that asked the question, represents Pluralsight, but from a holistic perspective, yeah, what would be your advice to this? Pete, actually, do you mind if I go to you on this one?
Yeah, talk to somebody. That's always my very first step when learning about something. Go through my Rolodex in my head and go, who do I know that's dealing with this, that's dealt with this? Hit them up, especially something like this where myself, especially as a front-end developer, I don't get my toes wet in DevOps very often. So I would honestly ask somebody who knows about it, and start there, and then, yeah, sure, take a Pluralsight course. But that's where I always start with almost anything. If someone has better advice, like an actual place to learn about continuous deployment, I'm sure AWS has a bunch of helpful docs on that stuff. I'm sure, because they're involved in that a lot. But that's what I would do. Yeah, talk to somebody you know, and then just hit up the professional resources like Pluralsight, and then if it gets desperate, go to Stack Overflow.
So time is running short, and I want to kind of end with one thing. We actually had some pretty interesting, good feedback on the panel today, and it's like, hey, you guys started out talking about lightweight, and if you can feel it, and then we we kind of hit lots of different subjects around leadership and overall process. I kind of know all that stuff. So let's try to bring it back, and this is probably on me. So if that's on me, but if we bring it back to where we started with, which is how to actually look at our current workflow, look at our current process, pinpoint where those issues are. How do we go? What are some specific things we can do to remove constraints and make that process more lightweight? Are there specific examples in your past when you've been able to perhaps remove steps, remove things to make things, less front and center for our engineering teams? And I'll probably go to Zorn first, and then Adam to conclude.
Yes, because I'm already starting to laugh. I have an answer to that. The single point where processes were impeding progress on a team and everything was hard. When I came to team, I saw that management, which is non-technical and basically had no clue how the software is developed, was impeding the process every single day. And what I did was to bring all the developers into one large room, put them there, close the door, and forbid any manager to talk to them. And that was so lightweight, you cannot imagine. There was no process anymore. And those guys made huge effort and delivered code the last day before penalties. So that was really desperate situation, and we moved out by a thread. And to say a word, and I will leave the microphone to others, about lightweight processes. Really, we did not mention processes, but I think that implicitly we all felt if you don't see the processes, then they are lightweight. If you see where development is going, if you want to deliver that code and apply only those techniques that work, and I will emphasize again, in small steps, you cannot plan 3 months ahead, because your requirements will not be these requirements in 3 months. You will be shooting somewhere aside. So make small steps, make improvements, and that will be the lightweight process.
Yeah.
Okay, so I won't steal more time to others.
That's great. Yeah. Adam?
So absolutely, Zorn, non-technical people making technical decisions is a 100% guaranteed disaster. So that is a very difficult thing to manage as an engineer, or even as an engineering manager. Sometimes you are stuck in that situation where there isn't so many people who are willing to let you stay locked in that room before they ring in the battering rams. But the concept is still absolutely there. The idea here is that getting your processes out quicker. So taking a lightweight approach, the idea behind the lightweight approach ultimately is you want to be able to push code out. You want to be able to maintain the morale of the engineers. You want to maintain the confidence of the end user. You've got to be pushing stuff out. So the idea around lightweight, from my perspective, inside of those four aspects, really comes back down to the ability to get that out, to get something out. And you have to partner majority of the time. Again, please take in context of where I'm coming from, right? Yeah. Versus maybe some of the smaller organizations. Yeah. But you've got to be able to find a way to partner with product. You've got to be able to find a avenue that you can have conversations with management where they can let you do what you do best. You are the technical aspect here. You know better than anyone else in the trenches what you're doing. You've got to take a step out. You've got to take that risk to go to your manager and be like, this is the process that we are failing at, and we can do better because you have the answers, right? We're not, again, I come as a manager, but I'm not going to come in with all of the solutions and hand them to you and tell you how to build a lightweight process. That's the worst person who should be making that decision, right? You should be able to take that information and to go out there. You've got wonderful things. We talked about Accelerate, Dev Book, Handbook. I'm a huge fan of Neil Ford and Mark Richards' architecture designs. These are the tools that you need to have behind you so that when you go and say, we need to make this process more lightweight, we need to make this move faster, that should be driven as much from down as it is from up. Because I trust my engineers. 100% they know better than I do. 100% they know what those roadblocks are that I just miss. I absolutely just miss it, right? And so that's my advice. My advice there is you know better than anybody else. It's hard. We're mostly all introverts, right? As engineers, it's kind of heavy. Do what you can to take that and to push it up. Get your peers together. Identify where those slowdowns are. That's the space. That's the space to execute against. That's the place to push on. In my opinion.
Love it. Adam, Zora, and Pete, all great comments. I love spending the last hour with you. I think the last few things were perfect. I think the theme I'm hearing from that, we've talked about a lot of themes today, but removing management from the process, trusting your engineers. This was never intended to be a product thing. We haven't talked about Pluralsight Flow. That was intentional. But I would be really remiss in saying that if you want to learn more about how to actually see like where management's getting in the way and how that shows up in data and where you can actually go find like, hey, management, this is what you're doing to my engineering team. Give us some space. Let me go, lock ourselves in a room away from you, like Zoran mentioned. Love to spend more time talking about it in the future. So please look this up. But this has been great. Happy to have you guys again. And hopefully this has been valuable for everyone. So definitely getting some people kind of kudos to the panelists in this one. So yeah, this will be recorded. We'll send this out. And we will we'll hopefully see you all again. So thanks again and have a wonderful Thursday morning, afternoon, or evening, depending on where you're at.
Thanks for coming, everybody. All right.